what?
G'day, g'day.
Hello.
Vikram! Fancy seeing you here on CE Only Fans. How's it
Yeah,
going?
it's going really well. What part of the world are you in?
I am dialing in from Fitzroy in Melbourne, which is on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and happy to be here. And yeah, great to talk to you. Where are you dialing in from?
I am dialing in from Singapore.
Okay, you didn't go anywhere else since the last time I saw you in Singapore a few days ago. I
No,
thought you might have jetted off to Bali or something.
no, I'm in town.
Awesome. Now, hi, for those of you who are coming to check out CE Only Fans, my name is Jeanette Cheah. I'm the CEO and founder of HEX. We're an education technology company that is all about raising the exponential intelligence of this global workforce and creating a new generation of leaders and doing that through our education programs and intensive innovation programs. And this is Vikram Bharati, who is the CEO and founder of Draper Startup House. Vikram, do you want to give us your one-liner on what you're doing over there?
Sure. We are in the business of helping other people build their businesses. So our mission is to make the world a better place by helping create 1 million new businesses over the next decade. And so we do everything around that mission. We have physical spaces around the world that hosts people. We have education programs. We have an investment fund. And we have a lot of business services around that. So all of that is packaged together as a concept, which we use to help people build businesses.
Fantastic. And nice to see some people joining in the chat. Hi, Sarah, Max, Jelly, Shay, good to see some names. And if you are watching, do feel free to jump in and comment, ask questions. I'm happy to see that there are real people on the other side of that green light on my computer. Now, Vikram, you and I have known each other for a few years now. And I remember when I met you the first time, I was so impressed by, I don't know, the way that you have a clarity of vision, but also the way that you bring your own authentic self to what you do at work. And I think one of the best ways you can explain that is taking your love of backpacking and making it into like a business that's got real mission. Do you want to tell us about how you started to kind of go down that path, and where did you backpack to? How many countries did you go to?
Sure. Yeah. So backpacking is, I feel, an activity that I hope many people in the world do, because it's super fun and you really get to see the world, and it really shapes your perspective about this global economy that we live in. I did backpacking not when I was 18 or 19, but when I was a professional. While I was working, so I took a sabbatical about 10 years ago and decided to travel the world. I ended up traveling to, I think, close to 60 countries. I spent 2 years just solo traveling and seeing the world. And that was a very sort of fundamental time of my life, because it really helped me shape my views on different communities, different religions, different sets of people, different mindsets. And I still feel that that was a seminal moment for sort of shaping what I'm doing today.
Absolutely. And I mean, from a personal perspective as well, you spent a lot of time of your life in Singapore, but then also educated in the States. So you went to uni, and is it California?
Yes, I grew up in California and went to university in California, went to grad school in California, worked in California, and now I live in Singapore. I am, from a heritage perspective, my father is Indian, my mother is Burmese, and so I have Asian roots, and have lived, pretty much all around the world. So I call myself a global citizen, or an international citizen. And I think I'm privileged in the sense that I have access to, the Western world, the Eastern world, the Asian world, the Indian world, which is a very privileged position to be in. And I hope to sort of use my position of privilege in that way, and a great luck to be able to help other people hopefully see the world.
That's fantastic. And I think, we've got a little bit, I don't quite have such a diverse background as yourself, but, Chinese Malaysian heritage, born in the States and then raised mostly in Australia with a bit of kindergarten over in Japan. So I think this global experience definitely helps to shape a perspective, which is pretty cool. And not everyone gets to do that. So, I mean, for those people that might be sitting there thinking like, okay, cool, that's great that you're global, but I haven't had the chance to travel much, or I haven't had the chance to see the world. What kind of things would you suggest they could do in order to get that kind of global perspective, maybe from wherever they are?
Yeah, so I think, interestingly, we live in a time where the world is becoming smaller and smaller, because those who were born, with the iPhone in their hands, for them the whole world is really, in the palm of the hand. So the world is getting smaller. People are aware of essentially all the different groups of people around the world, because it's all there in the palm of our hands. And so I think I think those, like the hexes, as you call them, right? They're sort of in a very amazing time of the history of the world, where this is the first time where you can sort of communicate and interact with anybody and everybody around the world. So in that sense, the world is small, but I think there's no substitute for really seeing and feeling and talking to people in real life, and experiencing cultures in a sort of a real way, interacting with humans on a face-to-face basis. And so I think in terms of how you would do that, I mean, if you're in Hexi dialing in from Australia, certainly I think you're probably more privileged than half the world, or more than half the world, to be able to have potentially the ability to travel to other countries and really see that in real life. So I would encourage it in whatever way you can. Maybe join the HEX program and go to a different part of the world.
Totally. And I guess I'd love to see if you're here and watching and you're in the comments, let me know where you're dialing in from, so we can see just how far this little chat is reaching. Now, Vikram, the purpose of CE Only Fans, and the name is a clue, is really just to kind of get a little bit, behind the curtains, a little bit of a sneak peek into the life and the brain and the mindset of someone that is crazy enough to run a business and start a business in today's world. So, and you weren't always a CEO. You started your career, I guess, it was investments and in venture capital and other sorts of things. So can you tell me how you managed to change your mindset from the person that was working for someone else to the person that's decided to build something? What's that mindset change look like?
Yeah, I think the mindset change from going from an employee working at a large corporation, which is where I worked at JP Morgan in banking for a very long time, and that the mindset there is certainly very different from starting your own company. But I would say the mindset shift is it's really a journey of self-development. And from the outside, it may seem as if it's all sort of external facing, but actually most of it is internal facing, and it is the way you sort of develop your own sort of shift in priorities and goals, and also having the confidence to put yourself in a position where you can actually push forward. And so the mindset shift for me, number one, was courage. It does require a bit of courage to start something which may not work out, and usually it doesn't work out. And so that courage is, I think, very important. And I would say generally my sort of biggest, not advice, but sort of suggestion to those who may want to start a company is really look at it from a perspective of courage. And I feel that the Hexi generation is such a privileged position, because it is a lot easier to start a business today than it ever was before, because you have access to communication channels, and you have the ability to reach customers with the click of a button. And so But the competition is also getting very, very strong. So I think the mindset shift for me daily has to be, do I want to live a life of courage and do the things that are difficult, or do I want to live a life of ease, where nothing is difficult and everything is very easy? So the idea of sort of stretching your personal development was something that I had to sort of really focus on. And today, at Draper Startup House, which is the company that I run, I have a huge sense of responsibility because we have 40, 50 employees all over the world that are sort of relying on this thing working out, because they're all here and they believe in the cause and the mission. And so the sense of responsibility is great. And I think that does require courage, because sometimes it's scary, to say, wow, that all these people dependent on this thing working out. So I think that sense of responsibility does help me sort of push things forward and not give up.
Absolutely. I couldn't relate to that anymore. I think I still remember the first time I had that realization that, oh my gosh, it's not just me, it's actually somebody else's rent and someone else's school fees and someone else's grocery bill that relies on the ability of, like, my ability to keep things moving and keep going. And it's a really, really scary moment, but also one of great, I guess, like, it's quite special, because you realize you're building not just something for yourself, but for the world and for your team and for the economy, and that's pretty cool. I'm noticing that actually in the comments we've got people coming in from Adelaide, Malaysia. I think there was India somewhere as well, and where else have we got? Sydney. Hi guys, nice to see you all. And if you're relating it all to this concept of bringing courage into your day-to-day work, I'd love to see in the comments, like, what's been something that is freaking you out, either at work or at a time that you had to bring courage into your life. Was it choosing a particular course? Was it choosing to do an internship? Was it choosing to travel? I'd love to hear what people are thinking. But Vikram, let's get a little bit into the the behind the scenes stuff. Let's talk a bit about those moments when you really had to tap into courage, when you thought that, oh my gosh, I could go either way here. There's a moment where it could all go wrong, or I'm not sure if I'm doubting myself and my ability. Do you have a story or a moment which brings up that memory for you?
Yeah, Jeanette, I'm sure you can relate to this, but every year that goes by, you learn new things about how to manage yourself and how to manage, a company and people. And this year, I've learned a lesson which I'm trying to better understand and really try to apply to my everyday life, which is humility. I think is a very important concept for me, because though it is true that you need courage to get started, you need courage to push forward, the reality is, once you set something in motion, things happen generally that a lot of times you don't have control over. And when you set this mission forward and you set it into motion, a lot of times you have to sort of become like someone that actually has to kind of sit back and let things happen without you having to really try to control it.
What? What a concept. You mean I don't have to be a control freak in charge of everything?
Right.
Can't relate.
Right. And that does require a little bit of sort of like experience to like let things go, because I think a lot of the internal sort of everything inside of you tells you that you want to like make sure you're like controlling everything. But the reality is, and this is the humility part, where once you do set things in motion, if you have a vision that's larger than life and you get things, the machine sort of like rolling, a lot of times to actually not meddle in things, and letting the folks that are in your team, hopefully you have a strong trust with them, and you let them sort of figure things out. And I think that component is something that I'm trying to get a grasp on, because it is something that requires a bit of learning. So I think I forgot your question, but I hopefully that answered part of it.
Yeah, I was curious about if you had like a moment where you had to sort of really tap into, like a courage moment, to be like, okay, I've got to make a decision here. I'm going to take an action here. And it was something that kind of felt like quite deep-seated.
Well, it's every day. It's
Yeah.
every day. It's every quarter. Um, when you're building a company that's early, that's in an early stage, which is I think where HEX is, which is where Draper Startup House is, and early and global. Then essentially every day is a challenge. Every day is an uphill battle. Every day something breaks down. Every day there's a moment of panic. Every day there's amygdala hijack that happens where some things are working really good over here, but some things are just like breaking down over here. And so I think every day requires a moment of like realigning to say, well, you can't control it all, you can't fix it all, and you have to sort of focus on the things that are working, and hopefully the things that are not working will kind of work itself out. But I think deciding every single day not to let the things that are not working weigh you down
Mm.
is, I think, it's a moment of clarity that you need to have every single day, and especially when you're early stage, you're running out of money all the time. You have to raise capital. You have to figure out a way to get the machine sort of keep on chugging on. And so you may have this long vision for many, many years, but you also have to do sprints of a quarterly sprint or a yearly sprint. And so sort of managing this long-term vision with short-term administrative restrictions is I think it's a balance that I have like basically every single day.
Mm. I can completely agree. And as you're talking, I'm like, get out of my head. Because honestly, this stuff just it's every single day. It's a rebalance every day. It's a choice every day. And I think what's really cool about this discussion as well is it's not just for startups. It's also for kind of anyone in early career who's trying to figure out how can I get past being the person that does all the things and is known for being a really great executor, and also being the person that can kind of like set strategy, sit back, think bigger picture. And I think that answer of you can do both and you have to do both. You must, in fact, if you're going to get out of execution and doing into leadership. That's a constant balance. And I know I'm meant to be interviewing you, but I'm just going to share this little tip that I learned when I was probably, I'm going to say like 23 or so, which was about the balcony and the dance floor. And you've probably heard this one, Vikram, but it's like when you're operating every day, you're dancing. You're on the dance floor, you're like shaking your pom-poms, you're having a great time, you're reacting to things that are happening on the dance floor. But once in a while, you have to go up on the balcony and look down on the dance floor to go, okay, what's actually going on here? Where's the exit? Who's the creepy person I need to avoid? Where's the person I want to go talk to? And actually kind of get the big picture strategy of the dance floor and then come back down and dance. And I think as you grow your leadership potential, like you can start to do that really quickly. You can be in a meeting and go, oh, I'm going to go quickly on the balcony, check out what's going on. Okay, and now I'm going to come back and dance. So yeah,
I like that. I like that a lot. And one thing that I'm trying to sort of now better understand and get a grasp of and really trying to live it is, I had this sort of thought that, when you're trying to do something that's larger than yourself, which I think is the mission of HEX, which is your mission, which is the Draper Startup House mission, is we're trying to build something that's larger than ourselves, that's really going, if it really works and we're able to implement it, it's going to be really good for the world, right? It's going to be a value add. It's going to make people's lives better. And once you get to the grasp of that, you realize that actually, and this is where a little bit of like spirituality helps me, is that you're just a conduit to let this stuff come into the world. And coming back to this idea of not trying to control things all the time is, in some sense, how lucky are we that we have been sort of chosen to put these ideas and these organizations and these communities into the world, and we're essentially just a conduit, where the something higher, something bigger is channeling things through us, and how lucky are we that we are the conduit for which hopefully great things will happen in the world. So I think that sense of that really helps me sometimes to sort of like
Yeah.
organize myself, where I feel that uh, things are happening in a way which sometimes is hard to understand, but it's let it happen, right? Like let it just
Mhm.
take it day by day and let it happen. And so I like that dancing analogy because yeah, it's very relevant.
Yeah, and I love that. I think Sarah in the comments has just mentioned that the more we're able to strip away our egos and let go, we can kind of lean into the purpose. So great quote there, Sarah, and I think right aligned with Vikram's thought around just we are a conduit for great things to happen as each individual contributor to whatever it is that we do. And I think what I like about this chat is this is very counterintuitive or counter positioned to what we hear in the startup world, which is like be really like know your metrics and be predictable and be able to like control and force and drive to outcomes. And I think how do you sort of keep the spirit of abundance and creativity and humility in a world which forces startups and founders and professionals to be like so direct in their outcomes and so numbers driven? Like what's your take on that? Can you do both at the same time, or
Yeah, I think you have to do both. I mean, you have to be, the metrics and the processes and the structures. I mean, I think these are all very important things for an organization to really, really work. But also, from a CEO perspective, from the person that's sort of, in a way, if you want this organization to grow, you can't be doing that all the time yourself, right? Hopefully, you can bring in people who can actually help you with that part, and then you set yourself to a point where you kind of set the sort of the stage where these things will thrive. And it's, speaking of scarcity and abundance, I think this is a really, really good topic, and this is something that I'm reading about and learning about as we're speaking, and which is I recently read this book. I forget which one it was, but the book makes a really good point of that if you think about our economic systems today, like globally, right? I'm sure all the students here have taken on Econ 101, or we understand the basics of like economics. Uh, these were ideas that were created and implemented or studied by academics, etc., at a time where scarcity was the key factor, right? Like your
Mhm.
labor, the materials, the commodities on the planet, the food, everything was a scarce resource. And so
Mhm.
the basics of economics have always been scarcity, and that's how our economic structure has been created, is based on
Yeah.
scarcity. And this was before semiconductors, right? And so, but now we have semiconductors and we have technology which is actually creating abundance, where it is, the it's deflationary, where the cost of everything should be coming down because the cost
Mhm.
of computing is essentially going down to zero, which is creating a lot of abundance, right? And so the way we can communicate, the way we can collaborate, the way we can create value in the world, these are not scarce things. These are actually abundant. And this is becoming very clear to us, especially the generation that has grown up with computing in their palm of their hands. So as a CEO, you have to kind of realize, well, maybe the world is not as scarce as we thought it was.
Mm.
Maybe the idea of abundance is actually it's real, and maybe our economic structure needs to be rethought of in terms of how do we create abundance. And people's ideas are now becoming a lot more, millions of ideas are coming to the computer screen.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think we live in a very exciting world, where the idea of abundance is not, it's not some woohoo, it's not some, it's actually real, right? Like this communication, this interaction this is abundance, and this is something we couldn't do 10 years ago. So
Exactly.
I feel as a CEO, I want to sort of really understand this topic, because value creation can happen in a new way, which 10, 15 years ago was very, very different.
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot to what I believe is one of the best parts about being a CEO and making decisions, is that we get to choose how we deploy our own resources, what kind of procurement we do, how we treat staff, how we take care of our customers. Like all of those micro decisions, I think adds up to the kind of world that we want to live in. And if we are living in an abundant world, and I want to live in a more equitable world, I want to make sure all of my decisions add up to that. So I love that abundance concept. I'm going to actually throw to the question in the chat from Shirley. Hi, Shirley, which is, what are some tangible actions we can take today to grow leadership potential? So Vikram, you said you've got 30, 40 staff. What would you tell them if they wanted to, step into their leadership power? What kind of practical tips would you give those people?
Yeah, the tip that, or at least the leadership quality that I am trying to develop, is really like giving trust, before giving trust to people before expecting trust, and I think this for me I think is fundamental, because if you want to build a global organization, if you want to have employees all around the world helping you to drive this mission forward, you can't do it by yourself, and you can't micromanage. And so the idea of giving trust to people first, trusting people first to be able to do things, I think that is something that I find it to be very, very powerful. And if you bring on good people and you just give them trust to be able to do things, then it solves a lot of the problems, because you don't necessarily have to be micromanaging folks all around the world. So I think giving trust as a first step, and then it doesn't always work out, right? Because sometimes there's
Are you
bad
saying
actors.
sometimes you make the wrong decision? Does that occasionally happen?
That happens a lot, but it's easier to give trust first, and then when things don't go well, then you can pull it back. But I find that giving trust first is a strategy that I am trying to utilize every single day. And so I think that if you want to grow your leadership potential, to Shirley's question, I think the idea of giving trust is very, very important.
And on the other side of that coin, so for the people that you have shown your trust to, what could they do in their day-to-day roles or anything to sort of demonstrate to you that they're ready for the next step, or that they're here for the mission, or that they might be ready to get promoted? Like if I take it right down to sort of their career paths, the people in your organization, what could they do to demonstrate that to you?
Yeah, I think generally the folks that I work with around the world, the demonstration is just very clear. When someone accelerates, what they're supposed to be doing in a much faster way, in a much more creative way, it rises to the top. Very seldom, I think, it's very hard. I think in today's world, it's very hard to be someone that's creating a lot of value to be hiding somewhere in some corner. Employees that are creative, that do things, which accelerates their responsibilities. It's almost impossible to like keep them hidden away. They all rise up to the top, right? Because I think in today's world, everything is sort of like very, very
Very transparent,
right?
Yeah.
And so, for example, if we have someone, say in South America, that is supposed to be creating programs, right, in different countries, and all of a sudden, there's 10 programs happening where you only expected 2 or 3. That's just essentially very difficult to keep hidden. So I think those who shine, and and this is where trust is also important, because you kind of have to let them make mistakes. Now you have to let people make mistakes, because to shine, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to stumble. But if you shine, you shine, and there's like no way to keep that shine hidden.
That's so true. Yeah. That's very inspiring. If you shine, you shine. I think we'll put that on I feel like I need to engrave that into like a poster or something and put it somewhere. Now, I'm going to change the angle of this conversation a little bit, because we are on CE Only Fans, and you have successfully, you're successfully building this business, and you've successfully raised capital. And let's talk about some of that stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about fundraising, because obviously your business was able to shine in a world where there's a lot of other people trying to get attention and try to get money and all that kind of stuff. Can you give us some idea about like maybe your top 2 to 3 tips of how did you get out there and get the attention and the cash that you needed to build the business?
Yeah. So in the context of like HEXs or anyone in this group that wants to build a company and needs to raise capital, the good news is there is no better time in the history of humanity to be able to start a company and raise money. And so I feel those who have the ideas, they should really put it out there in the world and let the world know that they're trying to build this, and just put it out there. Like people will take notice. And I think a lot of times we try to hide, our ideas. We try to be very careful about, what people see, what people don't see. But I think it's important to just let the world know, the big vision you have, the big mission you have, write the posters, put your mission on the wall. And I think people will take notice. And if you want to be noticed, go out there and put yourself out there, and people will notice. And those who notice and those who can feel, they will help. I think people always help. If they feel that your vision and mission is aligned with their perspective of the world, people will help. And I think there's plenty of capital in the world. You just have to let them know that you are raising capital. And the other thing I would say here is, I think in the past, to raise capital, you would have to like really go and knock on doors, close doors, find the doors, knock on doors. But I think today we live in a world where fundraising there's so many more avenues, right? There's equity crowdfunding, there's like digitally, you can, there's Twitter. And so it's a lot easier to actually get noticed and put your stuff out the world if you're building something that's meaningful. And so I think getting people to come to you is something that I think is very powerful. It's more efficient as opposed to you going out there and knocking on doors. If you let the world know you're fundraising and you're raising capital, and people will take notice. Yes. But that's that instinct of letting the world know that you're fundraising, that messaging, that requires a bit of that's the biggest problem, because that requires a bit of courage to let the world know that, hey, we're fundraising, right? And I see these videos all the time on TikTok and LinkedIn and Twitter where people say, hey, I'm building this, I'm fundraising, come invest in my company. And I think that's fantastic. Like you can be doing that, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But today, exactly.
Yeah. I think your point around, it's storytelling, but it's also, I think if you've aligned with your own personal mission enough and you found a way to explain it. I often say to people, what did the world look like before you, and what will the world look like after you? That's kind of if you can paint that picture, it's like, here's today, here's tomorrow, and here's how I'm going to do it. And if having that courage to put it out there is one thing. And then I think the other thing to get really comfortable with is not everyone's going to be for it, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to get everyone's approval. You don't have to get everyone's money. You just need to find your people that connect with your message, and they're only going to connect with your message if you're brave enough to kind of articulate it in a way that connects emotionally. So we're at the end of the day, investors are only people, right? They're just humans that are looking to make a difference, and their actual job is to give money to people. Like, so it's not like you're making things difficult for them, right? You're trying to tell them that, here, I'm over here, best investment of your life, right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like fundraising has dramatically changed over the last few years, and it depends on what part of the world you're in, but it's if you're on Twitter and you're fundraising in Australia, you can reach the world, right? Whether or not investors are in the US or in Europe, I think the tools to fundraise, the tools to get noticed, the tools to put yourself out there, to get the message out there. This is an incredible time in humanity where an idea can flourish just with a few clicks of buttons and building your community. And I think this is the other part of fundraising that I think is important. No matter what business you're in, right? Let's say you're building a new type of toothpaste or a new type of shampoo.
I know someone that's actually doing that, so I'll let him know that you're looking for a new toothpaste brand.
Well, okay, yeah, sure. Happy to
Great deal for you, Vikram.
Yeah. Well, so like whether you're building like some very basic, products, or you're building the next, generation of machine learning algorithm, I think it's very important to build the communities around that. And this is the community building part, which I think, Draper Startup House and HEX is able to do well, is really communicate with and engage with your customers, potential customers, which is the easiest it ever has been to create, a group of your 1,000 fans, fans, right? Who would love that toothpaste or would love to try your new machine learning algorithm, right? And actually, I have a funny story. Alex, Alex, he works at Accelerating Asia. I don't know if you met him. He had this idea. He's awesome. He was here in Singapore. He lives in Bali. He was here a couple of months ago, and he had this idea to launch a product, a digital product that would essentially give you, if you have a website, it will let you know anytime the website is about to go down.
Okay, helpful. Yes.
Because a lot of times when you're a small business, you find out after the fact that your website is down. Then you have to go and like figure out why the website is down, right? So with his service, you can pay him like $9 a month, whatever it is, or $9 a year. He has a sort of a pricing, and it just monitors your website and it pings you every lets you know if the website is doing well. If there's any sort of like issues, it will ping you before the potential for the website to go down. And he had this idea, and he was just going to bars in Singapore and like telling people, saying, "Hey, you want to be my first customer?" And people literally I was like, "Yeah, I will be your first customer." I gave him a few dollars to sign me up. And I think that the idea of like building these communities around this idea, and he pre-sold a bunch of first subscribers, but I think like the ability to do this has never been better in the history of the world. So building communities around a product or service is very, very helpful for fundraising.
Absolutely. And I think, having that bolshiness and also just kind of checking with the market before you build it is so clever as well. It's the way to go. Now, I'm not going to pivot again to something that I believe has been very influential in your life in the most recent times, which is dunking your body into a bucket full of ice. So tell me about this unique wellness trend. Is this now part of your CEO ritual, is taking ice baths in the heat of Singapore?
Yeah, so that's been really, really fun. We've been doing it regularly as a community, and it wasn't my idea, but one of our colleagues started doing ice baths and saying, "Hey, we should all do it together," and we said, sure, why not? And so it's been a few months, and we regularly all get into a tub of ice cold freezing water for 10 minutes, and it's been fantastic. If you haven't tried it, I would highly recommend it, because it really does help with like loss of it helps you with inflammation in your body, and it helps you sleep better, operate better. if you're an athlete, it helps you with inflammation in your muscles, so you can exercise better. If you're a runner, I like to run, so I've noticed that my running is better because it does remove inflammation from your muscle pains.
Wow.
And so it's been really good. But I think from a psychologically, that first initial feeling that you have when you go into an ice cold, freezing, like basically 2 degrees or 0 degrees, freezing water, the first instinct is to jump out. The first instinct is to say, I can't do this. I've got to jump out. It literally, the first few minutes, your body is basically in shock, and everything inside of your body says, jump out, jump out, jump out. You can't do this. You can't do this. But you do that for 2 minutes, and then your body gets used to it, and then you do 10 minutes, and then you get used to it. So I think it's in a way psychologically also.
I was going to say, what a great analogy for running a startup. Every fiber of your being is like, what are you doing? Stop doing this. It's so hard and painful. And then you just have to go, nope, we got this. 1 more minute, 1 more day, 1 more week, 1 more month. And yeah.
By the way, we did with the HEX group that's here.
I saw on Instagram.
Yeah, and I think they all loved it.
I bet they did. I'll have to definitely try it. If you've tried anything like that, put it in the chat, because I haven't tried it yet. But one thing, what I do, Vikram, is I'm weight training at the moment. So I'm like lifting heavy objects. And so to me, it's a little bit similar. It's like you kind of go for that first lift and you go, okay, I can't do it. It's too heavy. And then it's like brace, breathe, mental set. And then you can kind of get your, lift these things that you never thought you'd be able to do. And that's probably my little analogy to doing the hard work that we do. We got a few more minutes with Vikram. So if you do have questions about anything from doing business in Singapore to being a CEO to ice baths and anything else, please do drop them in the chat. This is your chance. But Vikram, I'm going to just take that ice bath thing a little bit further and say, how do you prioritize and take care of your mental wellness as a founder? Because we're pretty on all the time and being responsible for things and big visions and lots of ideas. How do you balance your mental health and your mental well-being?
Yeah, for me, I have to exercise, and I think exercising really helps me with my mental well-being, because it does flush out. You go for a really good run or really good workout, it does flush out, a lot of the stresses in your body. It does clean out your mind. And so I really believe in what I'm doing. I really believe in the company that we're building. I really believe in the vision and the mission. And not to say that everything is working. There's a lot of the business model, all that needs to be sort of like hashed out. But I generally really, really believe in the goals that we're trying to achieve and the things that we're trying to achieve. So from that perspective, I am, very content. But the day-to-day sort of stresses is sort of compounds and accumulates, and the challenges. So for me, it's regular exercise, physical exercise is like without that, I think it'd be very difficult for me to actually operate on a sort of a normal level. So whether it's daily or 3-4 times a week of like exercise is what helps me with my mental well-being.
That's super important. And I think I definitely have this last year, I'd say, like, it was a very successful professional year, but it was probably one of my hardest mental health years in terms of just anxiety and stress. And I think realizing towards the end of the year that I need to have a few other things on my plate to make sure I'm balancing it out and I'm not just all in and burning myself out, I think was really important. So very good tip. Now, I'm going to ask you to, I've got Sarah's mentioned that you're doing, the 5-minute cold shower. Okay, we'll, good start. Let us know, Sarah, when you've done the ice bucket challenge. We'll like to see the results of that. Now, Vikram, do you have some words of inspiration for people out there building things? You've talked about how it's the best time. We've got to get out there. We've got to have some courage. What would you tell yourself at the day one of this journey? How, if you went back in time to speak to Vikram before he launched the DSH?
So in the context of sharing some insights in terms of anyone who wants to start something, right? Someone who wants to start a business or organization or whatever it is, like start a project or venture, anything they want to start doing. This is sort of timeless and maybe a little cliche, but I think the best thing to do is don't overthink it and just get started. Like just like put your first foot forward and get it started. Don't let it sit in the back burner, forever. It needs to be pushed out into the world. And so just the idea of getting started, I think it's still the most sort of powerful thing that's what I would tell myself if I had to go back and say, okay, what should I be doing? Is just to get started, just to, no matter, how bad the product or service is or the idea is, it's only going to get good if you put it out in the world and just start it. So taking that first leap of faith is still the best thing you can do. And then everything else will follow.
Yeah, and don't deprive the world of your ideas. I mean, what a shame if they just kind of withered on the vine and no one got to hear them. So, I like that. Just taking one small step towards the thing that you're trying to do, whether it's getting a new job or upskilling in something or starting a business or whatever your goal is, like one tiny little step, I think is super, super helpful. Would you give Vikram back in time any warnings? Would you tell him to look out for this pothole or don't take that left turn or something?
Yeah, I think it would be get started earlier. I think that's always the biggest impediment, is that the biggest roadblock is just not getting started earlier enough. Getting started when you really want to get started is always a delay, and I think that is the biggest obstacle. All the other obstacles can be overcome, but I think the biggest obstacle that I've noticed because we talk to thousands of startups all the time, and the biggest obstacle is just not getting started or getting started too late.
Yes.
So that's the biggest obstacle.
I got to tell you, that's one of the main reasons I founded HEX, because I spent 14 plus years working in a corporate career before I got the courage to actually step up and do my own thing. And I do wonder what it could have happened if I started 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier. It might have been a completely different journey, but I do regret spending a lot of time not doing that. And I don't want other people to feel that. Although if that's your journey, that's also fine. Vikram, final words, anything else? Thank you for being on CE Only Fans. I mean, I think we got a really great insight into the way that your mind works. You're such a big picture conceptual thinker, and I think you've got a really great grounding in your humanity, which makes you an awesome leader and an awesome visionary. So always super inspiring for me to talk to you, and thank you for sharing your energy with the crew here online. And as Sarah said, you're advocating this build the plane as you fly the plane, which is very, very cool. Any final words for the Hexies online?
I mean, thank you. I think if you haven't joined one of the HEX programs, you should. they're fantastic, and just if you want to build something, just get started. What a way to end.
Vikram Bharati, CEO of Draper Startup House, based in Singapore. Go and visit them if you happen to be in one of their 30 plus locations around the world. They are kind of the landing pad for entrepreneurs globally. So check out DSH around the world. Vikram, thank you for joining us. Sorry, my notifications are popping off. And for everyone online, it's been so nice to see you here and to hear your questions and your reactions to Vikram's comments. So thank you for joining us wherever you're dialing in from. And that's us. We out. What are you?
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thanks,
Bye,
Vikram.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
The fact that you signed up for HEX Ed tells me you're not somebody who wants to stay at this level. Hi, guys. in business, there is a perception that I think you need to be a bit of a dickhead, and hopefully I can say that and they don't beat this out. Should I start again? I have no idea what I'm saying.
It's about using the resources you have to make the world a better place.
It's going to sound very, very, very weird.
Oh, so cringe.
We're going to meet so many interesting people, and I just can't wait.